The emergency lights pulsed red across the Galactic Council chamber's crystal walls. A single blinking dot on the central screen tracked an unknown vessel moving through their defense network. Admiral Rex demanded answers from the nervous technician. The ship's design matched nothing in their database, and the markings on its hull were in an unknown language. Their linguists had just translated it. The ship was from a species calling themselves humans. Confusion rippled through the council. Humans were from a remote, primitive spiral arm of the galaxy, far from established trade routes. Rex dismissed them as a backwater species, assuming the ship's presence was a mistake or an act of foolishness. However, senior defense analyst Mark, who had studied reports on Earth, felt a growing unease. Human technological progress was unusually rapid. Mark urged caution. The vessel's energy signature was unique, unlike anything they had encountered. Rex scoffed, attributing it to primitive technology. But Mark pointed out the ship's sleek, purposeful design, lacking the ostentatious elements of typical first-contact vessels. This was a warship, efficient and advanced. Scans couldn't penetrate its hull, and its point defense systems were superior to their own. This ship was built by someone who understood space warfare. The chamber fell silent as more data poured in. The vessel maintained a steady course, its drive emissions minimal, yet its speed was impossibly high for such low energy output. Rex fumed. No species achieved this level of technology unnoticed. He suspected stolen technology or a severe underestimation of the humans. Mark revealed further anomalies, distortions in spacetime around the vessel. The ship was manipulating gravity, explaining the sensor difficulties. The emergency lights shifted to purple, signaling a council vote, first contact or incursion. Mark pleaded for a diplomatic approach. The readings suggested a civilization that developed in isolation, forced to innovate without external resources. They might have developed solutions the Council hadn't considered. Rex dismissed this, citing protocol. An unauthorized warship in their space required a military response. The vote was swift, fear and pride swaying the Council towards Rex's aggressive stance. As the greeting fleet, composed of 20 sleek vessels and 5 heavy combat ships, jumped into position, Mark felt a growing dread. The human ship, the HSS Vigilant, hung motionless against the stars, its dark hull absorbing light. It was smaller than expected, yet its presence was unsettling. The communications officer opened standard greeting channels, broadcasting in all known frequencies. A response came instantly. The main screen displayed the human captain, James Walker, in military uniform. His appearance was strikingly different. Only 2 arms, no scales or protective shell, and seemingly vulnerable skin. Walker spoke in perfect Council standard, requesting immediate assistance in a matter of galactic security. Rex bristled at the humans' directness. Walker explained they were pursuing criminals who had stolen dangerous weapons technology from Earth. Their tracking systems indicated they had passed through the sector 3 days prior. They meant no disrespect, but the situation was urgent. Mark noticed unusual fluctuations in the Vigilance power readings, suggesting incredibly advanced systems operating at minimal capacity. The ship was like a sleeping giant. Rex ordered the Vigilance weapons disabled and the ship to submit to inspection. Walker smiled slightly. They didn't have time for diplomatic procedures. The stolen technology could destabilize the entire sector. They were asking for cooperation, not permission. Rex's anger flared. He ordered an attack on the Vigilance primary drive systems. The combat ships moved into attack formation. Mark tried to intervene, but it was too late. The first warning shots streaked towards the Vigilant. The energy beams simply disappeared about 10 meters from its hull, absorbed by an invisible barrier. The Vigilant hadn't even been detected. Walker's expression remained neutral. He asked them not to repeat the attack, explaining their defensive systems were automated and might interpret further aggression as hostile. Mark's instruments went wild. The Vigilance energy absorption field wasn't just defensive, It was converting the attack energy into power. The ship's capabilities were far beyond anything he had imagined. Rex, furious, ordered a full attack. Before he could finish, every weapon system in the greeting fleet powered down. The Vigilant hadn't fired a shot. It had simply disabled them. Walker's voice, calm and sympathetic, echoed through the fleet. He reiterated that they didn't have time for this. The criminals they were pursuing had similar technology. Every minute wasted put the Council at risk. He asked if they would now discuss cooperation. The Council chamber erupted in chaos. Their most powerful ships had been neutralized without a fight. Centuries of unchallenged power hadn't prepared them for this. Mark watched Walker's calm demeanor with growing respect and concern. If this was their military technology, what else were they hiding? And what kind of technology were they so desperate to recover? The Council's main battle fleet, over 300 warships, dropped out of hyperspace, surrounding the Vigilant. Rex, humiliated and enraged, was confident they couldn't disable that many ships. On the Vigilant's bridge, Walker watched the approaching fleet with resignation and professional interest. He ordered his crew to defensive positions, reminding them to use no lethal force. These people were scared and proud. Mark, now on the flagship, studied the tactical display with increasing unease. The Council ships were forming a sphere around the Vigilant, their most aggressive containment pattern. He tried one last time to warn Rex, citing the Vigilant's fluctuating power readings. Rex dismissed him, determined to show the humans the Council's power. He ordered the assault. Hundreds of energy beams and plasma torpedoes rained down on the Vigilant. For a moment, it was obscured by the blinding light of the attack. When the energy dissipated, the Vigilant was gone. Someone cheered, but Mark knew better. His instruments registered something extraordinary: ripples in spacetime. The Vigilant reappeared directly above the fleet, having moved through space without using conventional engines. Before anyone could react, pulses of blue energy shot out from the Vigilant, disabling the engines and weapons of the surrounding Council ships. Walker's voice, still calm, explained that this was a demonstration of their drive system's basic maneuvering capabilities. He warned that they were detecting troubling energy signatures from the Council's central station, the same kind they had been tracking. In the next 10 minutes, the pride of the Council fleet was systematically dismantled. The Vigilant moved seemingly at will, each reappearance disabling more ships. No ships were destroyed, no crew harmed, but the message was clear. They were facing technology far beyond their comprehension. Mark's analysis painted a terrifying picture. The Vigilant wasn't using known propulsion or weapons. It was manipulating fundamental forces of the universe. His instruments suggested they were seeing only a fraction of its true capabilities. Rex, finally shaken, ordered all ships to stand down. He turned to Mark, his arrogance replaced by fear. What were they? Mark explained that they were the result of an intelligent, creative species left alone to solve their own problems. No trade routes, no shared technology, no Council oversight. They had to innovate or die. Now, he gestured at the tactical display, showing more Council ships going dark. They were seeing the results. Walker's voice returned. Now that they had the Council's attention, he reiterated the energy signatures. The central station had been compromised. The technology they were chasing wasn't just stolen, it was being activated. If they wanted to prevent a catastrophe, they needed to work together immediately. The flagship bridge fell silent. They had been so focused on the perceived threat of the Vigilant that they had missed the real danger growing within their own ranks. Their only hope now lay with the humans whose power they couldn't even begin to understand. Mark moved quickly through the central station's corridors, his heart pounding. His datapad held information that changed everything. After hours of analyzing communications and energy signatures, he had discovered a connection. The Council's aggressive response to the Vigilant hadn't been organic. It had been orchestrated. Someone had been feeding false information to key council members for weeks, subtly pushing them towards conflict. He was on his way to the main conference room. Admiral Rex stood at the head of the long, polished table, his scales gleaming under the soft light of the conference room. Across from him, Captain Walker, a human, stood with an unnerving calm, a stark contrast to the armed guards flanking him. The air crackled with tension, a palpable weight born of distrust and desperation. This temporary truce, forged in the face of an unseen enemy, felt fragile, easily shattered by the prejudices that had defined their interactions for so long. The technology they stole, Walker explained, his voice measured, isn't just a weapon. It's a key, a way of manipulating quantum fields to influence decision-making. The thief didn't just steal our tech, they stole our research into protecting against it. Before Rex could respond, the doors burst open, and Mark, a young analyst, rushed in, ignoring the guards' attempts to intercept him. "He's right, Admiral. Look at these communication logs." He thrust a datapad towards Rex. "Someone's been accessing the Council's secure networks, planting false data about human aggression in other sectors." The room fell silent. Rex, his scales paling slightly, scrutinized the data, the implications sinking in with chilling clarity. "These access codes, they're from Counselor Davis's office." Walker's composure finally cracked. "Davis." He snatched the datapad from Mark, his expression darkening with each passing line. The energy readings from Davis's office matched the signature they'd been tracking. "It's worse than we thought. Your Counselor Davis isn't just compromised. He isn't even the person using that identity. He is our thief. And they've been here for months, using our own protective technology to hide from your security systems." Rex slammed his fist on the table. "Impossible. Davis has been a council member for over a year. He's passed every security check, every DNA scan." "Because the stolen tech lets them fool your scanners," Walker interrupted. "They could project false biological readings, manipulate security systems, even influence the thoughts of people nearby. We developed this technology as a defense against exactly these kinds of infiltrations, but in the wrong hands—" Mark, his fingers flying across another datapad, interjected, "The energy spike from their office is growing. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon." A deep rumble shook the station. Emergency lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows as alarms blared to life. Walker's communicator crackled. "Vigilant to Captain Walker. We're detecting massive quantum field disturbances throughout the station. Someone's trying to activate a large-scale influence field. If they succeed, they could control the minds of everyone on board." Rex looked at the human captain, decades of prejudice crumbling under the weight of the present crisis. "What do we do?" Walker offered a grim smile. "The good news is, we came prepared for this. The Vigilant isn't just a warship, it's a testbed for quantum field technology. We can counteract their influence field, but we'll need your help. Our sensors can track them, but we don't know the station's layout." Mark stepped forward, his usual cautious demeanor replaced by steely determination. "I can help with that. I've mapped unusual energy patterns throughout the station. If we overlay those with the Vigilant sensor data, we can find their true location." Walker turned to Rex. "Admiral, I need you to evacuate as much of the station as possible. When we confront them, things might get weird. Quantum physics tends to do that." Another, stronger tremor shook the station. Through the conference room windows, they could see the Vigilant moving closer, its dark hull now emitting a soft, ominous blue glow. "Time's up," Walker said, checking his handheld scanner. "They're trying to extend the field to the whole sector. If they succeed, they could turn the entire council into puppets without anyone even realizing it." Rex straightened, his military training taking over. "All security forces, this is Admiral Rex. We have a code black situation. Begin immediate evacuation of all non-essential personnel." He looked at Walker, ready to follow the humans' lead. As emergency sirens wailed and thousands of beings rushed towards escape pods, Mark couldn't help but reflect on the irony. The Council had feared human warfare so much that they had completely missed the real threat hiding among them. Now, their only hope lay in trusting the very people they had tried to destroy. The central station's corridors had become a labyrinth of shifting shadows and strange lights. The quantum field generated by the false Counselor Davis was destabilizing reality itself. Emergency lights flickered erratically, casting grotesque shapes as small objects floated aimlessly, caught in localized gravity distortions. Captain Walker led the way, holding a device that looked like a simple wristband but somehow kept the quantum distortions at bay around them. Mark and Admiral Rex followed close behind, along with a small team of Council security forces. "This technology was never meant to be used like this," Walker explained as they moved forward. "It was designed to protect our colonies from infiltration and manipulation. In the wrong hands, it's turning the station's own structure against us." A wall ahead of them suddenly rippled like water. Rex's security team raised their weapons, but the weapons simply dissolved into dust in their hands. "Reality is breaking down," Mark observed, checking readings on a modified scanner Walker had given him. "The thief is trying to rewrite the laws of physics in this section of the station." Walker touched his communicator. "Vigilant, status report." Vigilant to Captain Walker. "Holding position. We're ready to deploy the countermeasure, but we need your precise location. The quantum fluctuations are interfering with our sensors." "We're almost there," Walker replied. "Mark, how close are we?" Mark consulted his scanner. "The energy signature is strongest just beyond this junction. It's like they've created a pocket of distorted reality, a kind of quantum bubble." They reached the junction, a wide corridor where the walls seemed to breathe and the air shimmered with an unnatural light. The security team hesitated, their faces etched with fear. "Stay close," Walker warned. "This is going to get interesting." He activated his wristband, and a faint blue aura enveloped him, pushing back the encroaching distortions. The effect was localized, creating a small sphere of relative stability around them. "Admiral," Walker said, "I need you to order your security team to hold back. Their weapons are useless here, and they'll only get in the way. This is a quantum fight, not a conventional one." Rex, though hesitant, recognized the wisdom in Walker's words. He issued the order, and the security team retreated slightly, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. Walker, Mark, and Rex advanced cautiously, the distorted reality pressing in on them from all sides. The air grew thick with a strange, buzzing energy. They could hear whispers, fragments of conversations, echoes of thoughts that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of space. "The influence field is at its strongest here," Walker muttered. "They're trying to amplify it, to extend its reach beyond the station." Suddenly, the corridor shimmered, and a figure materialized before them. It was Counselor Davis, but something was wrong. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and his face was contorted in a mask of malevolent concentration. "So," the figure said, its voice a distorted echo of Davis's, "you've finally arrived. I was wondering when you would catch on." "You're not Davis," Rex said, his voice firm despite the tremor of fear in his heart. The figure chuckled. "Davis is gone. He served his purpose. Now I am something more. I am the architect of your new reality. What do you want?" Walker asked, his hand hovering over his wristband. "Control," the figure replied. "Control over this station, this sector, this entire council. With this technology, I can reshape reality itself, bend it to my will. And you, Captain Walker, you and your human meddling, you are the only obstacle in my path." "We won't let you," Walker said, his voice hardening. The figure laughed. "You think you can stop me? You, with your primitive weapons and your pathetic understanding of the quantum realm? I am beyond your comprehension." The figure raised its hand, and the corridor around them began to twist and contort even more violently. Objects flew through the air, gravity shifted unpredictably, and the very walls seemed to melt and reform. "Mark," Walker said, "now." Mark, who had been silently working on his scanner, nodded. "I've synchronized the vigilance targeting system with the energy patterns I mapped. We've got a lock on the source of the quantum field. Vigilant," Walker spoke into his communicator, "fire the countermeasure." A beam of energy lanced through the distorted reality, striking the figure. The figure screamed, its form flickering and dissolving. The quantum distortions around them began to subside, the lights returning to normal, gravity stabilizing. The figure was gone, but the threat was not yet over. The quantum field was still active, though weakened. The countermeasure disrupted the figure. "Captain," came the response, "our quantum stabilization field is containing the effects to the station, but our readings show they're trying to establish a direct link to the Council's communication network. If they succeed, they could spread their influence across the entire Council space." Rex finished, his scales darkening with worry. Billions would be affected without even knowing it. They rounded a corner and found themselves facing what should have been Davis's office. Instead, they saw a swirling vortex of energy with reality bending and twisting around it. Inside, a figure stood at what seemed to be a control panel made of pure light. Walker raised his hand, and a blue shield of energy sprung up around their group. "This is as far as it goes," he called out. "Shut it down now." The figure turned, and they saw that it no longer bothered them, containing its council member disguise. Its form shifted and changed constantly like smoke in the wind. "Humans." The beam's voice echoed strangely, "always interfering. Your species wasn't supposed to develop quantum technology for another 1,000 years. We had planned." "Sorry to disappoint," Walker replied. He touched his wristband, and suddenly the vigilance presence could be felt even inside the station. The ship's quantum field technology extended through the walls, creating a zone of stable reality around them. The beam lashed out with a wave of distorted space-time. Council security forces, scattered as portions of the corridor began to age hundreds of years in seconds, but where the attack met Walker's shield it simply faded away. "Impossible," the creature snarled. "This is our technology. We planted the seeds of it on your world." Walker smiled. "Great Ly, no, you planted the basic concepts, but humans have a habit of taking ideas and improving them in ways no one expects. While you were watching our weapons development, we quietly revolutionized the entire field of quantum mechanics." The vigilance field grew stronger. Reality began to stabilize as the ship exerted its influence. Walls solidified. Gravity returned to normal, and the swirling vortex of energy began to shrink. "The difference between us," Walker continued, walking forward steadily, "is that we don't just understand the technology, we understand its limits, its costs, and most importantly, how to shut it down." The beam tried to escape, its form dissolving into pure energy, but the vigilance field caught it, forcing it back into physical form. Council security moved in with quantum-stabilized restraints provided by Walker's crew. Mark watched in amazement as the human technology systematically undid all the damage, restoring the station section by section. The vigilance power was beyond anything he had imagined possible yet. The humans had used it with surgical precision, causing no lasting harm. Rex stepped up beside Walker as the beam was secured. "Your ship could have done this at any time, couldn't it? You could have simply taken control of the entire station from the start." Walker nodded. "But that would have made us no better than them. Power isn't just about what you can do, it's about what you choose not to do." The Admiral looked at the human captain with new understanding. The Council had feared human warfare, but they had completely misunderstood what made humans truly formidable. It wasn't their technology, it was their restraint in using it. The Galactic Council's emergency session chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. The captured infiltrator sat in a containment field at the center, its form still shifting between shapes as the vigilance technology kept it from escaping into pure energy. Mark stood at a display console, presenting his findings to the assembled council. The evidence was overwhelming. The infiltrator had been manipulating council decisions for months, subtly pushing policies and creating artificial Tensions between species. The level of infiltration went deeper than we suspected, Mark explained, bringing up a complex web of compromised communications. They were preparing to take control of our entire civilization if the humans hadn't tracked them here, which brings us to the next matter, the High Speaker interrupted. Turning to where Captain Walker stood calmly at the chamber's edge, the humans have proven themselves to be far more advanced than we assumed. This raises concerns. Walker stepped forward. I understand your fears. You look at our technology and see a potential threat, but consider this: we knew about your civilization for years. We could have conquered or infiltrated you just as easily as our prisoner tried to do. Instead, we waited and watched, intervening only when we had to protect you from a direct threat. Rex, his scales now bearing the marks of combat from their recent battle, spoke up. The captain speaks truth. I let our forces against his ship, and they could have destroyed us at any time. Instead, they disabled our weapons with no casualties, no permanent damage. They showed more concern for our lives than we did for theirs. The infiltrator's strange voice echoed through the chamber. You don't understand what they are. We seeded their world with quantum technology concepts, expecting them to develop along predictable lines. Instead, they took our basic ideas and created things we never imagined possible. They're dangerous. No, Mark countered. They're innovative. While we relied on trading established technologies between species, humans had to solve their problems alone. They didn't just copy the concepts you left, they completely reimagined them. Walker touched a control on his wrist, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, but also hundreds of points of light spreading out from it. These are our colonies. We've been expanding, exploring, and building, all while developing defenses against threats exactly like our prisoner. We didn't choose isolation. It was forced on us, but we made the most of it. The High Speaker studied the display. And now, what are your intentions toward the Council? Cooperation, Walker replied simply. We're not interested in dominance or control, but there are more threats out there like our prisoner, more species who might try to manipulate or conquer through deception. We're offering to help you develop defenses against quantum-based attacks. Mark brought up new data on the screens. Captain Walker has already provided us with preliminary designs for quantum detection systems. With their help, we could protect all Council worlds from infiltration. The chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had been at each other's throats just days ago were now talking excitedly about cooperation and joint defense projects. The infiltrator influence had been splee but effective in keeping the Council divided. Now faced with both a common threat and a powerful potential ally, old rivalries were quickly fading. Rex approached Walker quietly. Your ship, the Vigilant, it's not really a warship, is it? Walker smiled. It's a research vessel, the most advanced quantum field laboratory ever built. We just made it look like a warship because we knew it would draw out our target. They couldn't resist trying to steal more advanced technology. The High Speaker called for order, and the chamber fell silent. Captain Walker, humanity's actions have proven both their power and their wisdom. The Council extends an official invitation for Earth to join our alliance, not as a subject race but as a full partner. We accept, Walker replied, on one condition. He gestured to Mark and Rex. The events of the past few days have shown that the Council needs to change. No more dismissing species is primitive simply because they develop differently. No more ruling through intimidation. If we're to face threats like our prisoner together, we need to build trust. The High Speaker looked around the chamber, seeing nods of agreement from most representatives. The Council had been humbled, but perhaps that was exactly what they had needed. Sometimes it took an outsider to show you your own flaws. 1 month after the capture of the infiltrator, the Galactic Council's central station buzzed with activity. Construction crews worked to install new quantum detection systems, while teams of human and Council scientists collaborated on improving the station's defenses. The fear that had first greeted the Vigilant arrival had been replaced by genuine curiosity and respect. Mark walked through the newly ran OV at Security Center, watching as human technicians taught Council operators how to use the quantum field detection equipment. The technology was advanced, but the humans had found ways to make it accessible and user-friendly. They weren't Just sharing their technology, they were ensuring everyone could understand and use it effectively. Quite a change from a month ago. Admiral Rex commented, falling into step. The side mark, the Admiral scales, had a new pattern now, the mark of someone who had learned wisdom through experience. Hard to believe we once thought of them as primitives to be contained. They entered the main conference room where Captain Walker was meeting with the High Speaker. The human captain had removed his military uniform, now wearing the simple blue robes of a Council scientific advisor. The Vigilant remained in orbit, but now it served as a training vessel, helping to prepare the Council's fleet for future threats. The quantum shielding is now active across 60% of Council space. Walker was explaining, pointing to a holographic map. Within 3 months we'll have full coverage. No one will be able to attempt this kind of infiltration again. The High Speaker nodded approvingly. And the prisoner, have they revealed anything more about their origins? Some, Walker replied. They're part of a group that's been manipulating younger species for millennia, guiding their development along predictable paths. Earth was supposed to be just another experiment. Instead, he smiled, we became their biggest mistake because you developed the technology in ways they never expected. Mark added, joining the conversation. They thought isolation would keep us weak, but it made humanity stronger. Exactly, Walker agreed. When you have to solve problems on your own, you don't just follow established path patterns, you innovate, create new solutions, think differently. Rex moved to the window, looking out at the Vigilant in orbit. Its dark hull now bore the combined emblems of Earth and the Council, a symbol of their new partnership. And now we all benefit from those innovations. The Council's first contact protocols have been completely rewritten. No more dismissing species is primitive simply because they developed in isolation. The High Speaker activated another holographic display showing the changes already spreading through Council space. Trade routes were being redrawn, diplomatic missions, reorganized. Species that had been ignored or overlooked were now being contacted with respect and genuine interest. The infiltrator attempt to weaken us has had the opposite effect, the High Speaker observed. Our civilization is stronger now than ever before, not through force or fear, but through cooperation and mutual respect. Walker's communicator beeped. Another detection system had come online, extending their protective shield to another sector of space. There are more threats out there, he reminded them. Other groups like our prisoners, probably even some we don't know about yet, but now we'll face them together. Mark reviewed the latest data from the quantum detection grid. The technology was elegant in its simplicity, yet incredibly powerful in its application, just like humanity itself. Seemingly simple on the surface, but containing depths that had surprised everyone, including their enemies. You know, Rex said thoughtfully, when we first detected your ship approaching, we thought it was the beginning of a war. Instead, it was the start of a revolution in our technology, our policies, even our way of thinking. Walker smiled. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't a weapon or a piece of technology, it's an idea that changes how people think. The infiltrators, people thought they could control development by keeping species isolated and dependent. Instead, they created exactly what they feared most, a civilization that learned to think for itself. The High Speaker raised his ceremonial staff, its crystal tip glowing with a new quantum-enhanced brilliance. Then let us hope we continue to surprise them. The galaxy is vast, and there are many more discoveries to be made together.